March 9th, 1999. Giza Plateau, Egypt. Temperature 104 degrees Fahrenheit. 3 archaeologists descend into darkness, 119 feet straight down. Vertical shaft, no ladder. Just ancient handholds carved into limestone. Each handhold worn smooth by 3,000 years of dust and time. Dr. Zahi Hawass leads the team. Behind him, 2 German engineers with oxygen tanks and climbing gear. The shaft mouth above them shrinks to a bright circle, then a dot, then nothing. At the bottom, absolute silence. Their headlamps cut through air so thick you can taste it. Humidity 97%, smell of wet stone, and something else. Something sweet and heavy that shouldn't be there. They're standing in water, 3 feet deep, cold. The kind of cold that doesn't belong in Egyptian desert. And here's where the official story falls apart. The Osiris Shaft, that's what they call it, named after the Egyptian god of death and resurrection.
Discovered in 1817 by Italian explorer Giovanni Caviglia. He got down 30 feet and turned back. Called it a tomb shaft, filled with debris, nothing special. But Caviglia lied. His private journal, stored in British Museum archives until 2008, tells a different story. He describes hearing sounds from below, mechanical sounds, like gears grinding. He writes about his workers refusing to continue. They claimed the shaft was cursed, protected by something that didn't want visitors. Caviglia sealed the shaft, never went back. Died 6 months later in a hotel room in Cairo. Natural causes, supposedly. Heart failure. He was 41 years old. The shaft stayed sealed for 162 years, until 1979, when a team from Cairo University tried again. They made it to 70 feet, found carved reliefs, images of Osiris lying on a platform. But the reliefs were wrong. The proportions didn't match any known Egyptian art style. The hieroglyphs used symbols that shouldn't exist, combinations that violated every grammatical rule of ancient Egyptian writing. The team photographed everything, sent the images to experts in Berlin and Oxford. 3 different Egyptologists independently confirmed the same thing. These hieroglyphs predated known Egyptian writing systems by at least 500 years. Here's the problem. The shaft was supposedly built during the 26th dynasty, around 600 BC. But the writing style? It matched samples from 1100 BC, 5 centuries earlier. Someone carved those walls before the shaft officially existed. The Cairo University team wanted to continue. They requested funding to excavate further. The Egyptian Antiquities Authority denied the request. No explanation given. The shaft was sealed again, this time with concrete. 20 years of silence. Then, in 1999, National Geographic funded a new expedition. They had permits. They had equipment.
They had everything except the truth about what they'd find. So here's my question for you, and I want you to think about this carefully before you answer in the comments. If this was just an ordinary tomb shaft, why did authorities seal it twice? Why concrete? Why not just leave it open for tourists like every other excavation in Egypt? What were they so afraid someone might see? Because what Hawass found at the bottom changes everything we think we know about who built the pyramids, and when, and why. Let's start with what they tell you in textbooks. The Giza Plateau, home to the 3 great pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, Menkore. Built as tombs for pharaohs around 2500 BC, constructed using copper tools and wooden ramps. Millions of limestone blocks, each block weighing 2.5 tons on average. some blocks weighing up to 80 tons. Standard story. You've heard it 1,000 times. The Osiris Shaft sits southwest of the Sphinx,
52 feet from the Sphinx's left paw, directly aligned with certain astronomical markers that Egyptologists don't like talking about, because those alignments point to star positions from 10,500 BC, not 2,500 BC, 7,000 years earlier than the official timeline. But we're told this is coincidence, random chance. The ancients got lucky with their architecture. Sure, the shaft itself is a perfect rectangle, 23 feet by 16 feet at the surface, walls absolutely vertical, 90-degree angles, laser straight. Try that with copper chisels and tell me how it goes. At 30 feet down, first chamber, small room, empty, except for 3 sealed doorways leading to side passages, each passage exactly 33 feet long, each ending in a small room with a stone sarcophagus. Empty sarcophagi. No mummies, no burial goods, no inscriptions identifying who these were for. 3 empty boxes in 3 identical rooms, like placeholders. Like someone was saving space for something that never came, or something that was removed before we got there. At 70 feet, second chamber, larger. This is where the Cairo team stopped in '79. The walls here show those impossible hieroglyphs. The carvings are deep, half an inch into solid limestone. That's not decoration. That's not casual art. That's someone making sure these symbols survived thousands of years of wear. The hieroglyphs describe a ritual, a resurrection ritual. They mention Osiris descending into the underworld. They mention water, a pool of primordial water where Osiris would be reborn. Egyptologists call this mythology, symbolic language, not literal. Except at 119 feet down, Hawass and his team found the pool. Actual water, clear water, cold water, in the middle of the Egyptian desert, in a sealed chamber that hadn't been opened in over 100 years. Where did the water come from? Hawass's official report says groundwater seepage. Natural aquifer, nothing unusual. Just water table rising through porous limestone. But limestone at Giza isn't porous. It's dense calcite, doesn't absorb water, ask any geologist. And the water level in the shaft never changes. Been monitored for 25 years now. Doesn't rise, doesn't fall. Stays exactly 3 feet deep, year-round, through droughts and flood seasons. Perfectly constant. Natural groundwater doesn't work like that. Natural aquifers fluctuate. They respond to rainfall. They respond to temperature. They respond to pressure. This water doesn't respond to anything. Like it's being maintained, regulated, by something we don't understand. Hawass's team wades through the water. Their lights reflect off the surface, creating patterns on the walls, moving shadows that look almost intentional, almost like they're being directed. The chamber floor slopes downward. Water gets deeper. 4 feet, 5 feet. They're chest deep now, and they feel it. All 3 of them report the same sensation in their official statements. A vibration, low frequency, below hearing range, but physically tangible, like standing next to a massive engine running underground. One of the German engineers, Klaus Weber, has a digital recorder for notes. He checks the playback later. The vibration registers at 19 hertz, just below human hearing threshold. The exact frequency that causes feelings of unease and dread in humans. The exact frequency that makes people see things in peripheral vision that aren't there. Ancient Egyptians couldn't have known about infrasound psychology.
That science developed in the 1970s, yet somehow they tuned this chamber to produce exactly that frequency. Accidentally? For 3,000 years? Think about it. At the far end of the flooded chamber, they find a doorway, submerged, completely underwater. Hawass takes a breath, ducks under. The doorway opens into a tunnel, angled down, dropping deeper.
He surfaces in another chamber. This one's different. The walls are carved floor to ceiling with reliefs. Not hieroglyphs, pictures. Detailed pictures showing the resurrection of Osiris. But these aren't symbolic representations. These are technical diagrams, step-by-step instructions. Panel 1 shows Osiris lying on a platform, dead, body in pieces. According to mythology, Osiris was murdered by his brother Set, dismembered, scattered across Egypt. Panel 2 shows his wife Isis gathering the pieces, reassembling him. Panel 3 shows something that shouldn't be there, a device, positioned above Osiris's body. It looks like a jed pillar, the symbol of Osiris's spine, but this one has internal details. Chambers, compartments, connecting tubes, energy flowing through it. It looks like a machine. Panel 4 shows Osiris sitting up, alive, resurrected. But his eyes are different. They're marked with a symbol that doesn't appear anywhere else in Egyptian iconography.
A symbol that looks disturbingly similar to modern electrical circuit diagrams. Hawass photographs everything. The German engineers take measurements. The reliefs are pristine. No weathering, no erosion. Like they were carved yesterday. Except they're covered with calcite deposits that take minimum 1,500 years to form. In the center of the chamber, an island, rising above the water, made of solid granite, not limestone, granite. The nearest granite quarry is 500 miles south in Aswan. Someone transported granite 500 miles, carved it, shaped it, installed it 119 feet underground in a chamber that officially doesn't exist, for a purpose that makes no sense. On the island sits a sarcophagus, black granite, enormous, 10 feet long, 5 feet wide, 4 feet deep. Lid sealed with some kind of resin. The resin has hardened to concrete consistency. Weber tries to take a sample. His diamond drill bit won't penetrate, just sparks.
Like drilling metal. The sarcophagus has no inscriptions, no cartouches, no identifying marks, completely anonymous. Every other pharaoh's sarcophagus in Egypt is covered with their names and titles, bragging about their achievements, claiming immortality. This one? Silence. Like whoever is inside didn't want to be found, or didn't want to be remembered. Hawass orders the team to open it. They bring down hydraulic jacks, pneumatic chisels. It takes 6 hours to crack the seal. The lid weighs approximately 4 tons. They lift it 1 inch at a time. Air rushes out, pressurized, like the sarcophagus was vacuum sealed. The smell hits them immediately. Not decay, not mummification spices. Something chemical, something artificial. Weber describes it as similar to ozone, that sharp metallic scent after lightning strikes. They lift the lid halfway. Hawass shines his light inside. Empty. No mummy, no bones, no burial goods. Nothing. Except at the bottom of the sarcophagus, carved into the granite, another relief. This one shows the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, the realm of the dead. But the Duat is depicted as a physical place, with architecture, with chambers and halls and doorways, with a map. A literal map of the underworld, with coordinates, with distances marked in cubits. with access points labeled. And one of those access points is marked with a hieroglyph that translates roughly to here, as in right here at the Osiris Shaft. The map shows tunnels extending from this chamber. 4 tunnels, cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. Each tunnel marked with distances. North tunnel, 320 cubits. South tunnel, 476 cubits. East tunnel, 208 cubits. West tunnel, 1,042 cubits. Oas looks at the walls of the chamber, searches for tunnel entrances, finds nothing. Solid limestone, no openings, no passages, no doors.
The map is either wrong, or the tunnels are hidden, sealed, waiting. And here's the thing that terrified Hawass enough to evacuate the site and seal it again within 48 hours. The West Tunnel, the one marked at 1,042 cubits, points directly toward the Great Pyramid. If you calculate 1,042 ancient Egyptian cubits, it equals approximately 1,784 feet. The distance from the Osiris Shaft to the subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid. Exactly. Someone carved a map showing a tunnel connecting the Osiris Shaft to the pyramid. A tunnel that official archaeology says doesn't exist, can't exist, would require engineering capabilities that ancient Egyptians didn't possess. Except, in 1993, a robot exploration of the Great Pyramid's southern shaft discovered a sealed door. Behind the door, another shaft. Behind that shaft, another door. Behind that door, a chamber.
In that chamber, hieroglyphs describing it as an entrance to the Duat, the underworld. Same language, same concept, same impossible claim. 2 separate sites, built supposedly by people who used copper tools and wooden ramps. Both sites claiming to provide access to a physical underworld. Both sites aligned with the same astronomical markers. Both sites showing engineering precision that we can barely match today. Coincidence keeps stacking on coincidence until you run out of coincidences and have to start considering that maybe, just maybe, the official story is wrong. Hawass made one more discovery before he ordered the evacuation. One more piece of evidence that didn't make it into his official report. One more detail that only surfaced 20 years later, when one of the German engineers, Weber, published his private journal. At the base of the granite island, underwater, they found an opening. Small, maybe 3 feet in diameter, perfectly circular, cut into solid bedrock.
The opening led down, angled steeply, descending into blackness. Weber volunteered to investigate. He's a certified cave diver. He's explored underwater systems across 6 continents. He's comfortable in tight spaces. He's comfortable in the dark. He strapped on his gear, checked his lights, descended into the opening. The tunnel dropped at a 45-degree angle, walls smooth, almost polished. He descended 60 feet, 70, 80. His depth gauge hit 90 feet, 100. He should be hitting the water table, should be finding the source of the water filling the chamber above. Instead, the tunnel leveled out, opened into another space, large space. His lights couldn't find the walls, just darkness extending in all directions. He surfaced, treaded water, shone his light around. He was in a cavern, natural limestone cavern, ceiling maybe 40 feet above him. The space felt massive. Echoes suggested it extended hundreds of feet in multiple directions. But caverns don't exist under Giza. The geology doesn't support it.
Solid limestone bedrock, no voids, no caves, no underground spaces. Every geological survey confirms this. Yet here he was, in a space that couldn't exist, in water that shouldn't be there, under a plateau that supposedly has no secrets left. He swam forward, looking for the cavern walls. His light caught something. Reflection. Not rock. Something smooth, metallic. He swam closer. The wall of the cavern wasn't natural. It was carved, covered in symbols, but not hieroglyphs. Something older. Something that looked almost like circuit diagrams. Interconnected patterns, geometric shapes, flowing lines connecting nodes and chambers and components. Weber reached out to touch the wall. The moment his fingers made contact, everything went dark. His lights, all three of them, dead. Backup systems, primary systems, emergency systems, all failed simultaneously. Complete blackness. 160 feet underground.
In a flooded cavern that shouldn't exist, with no way to see, no way to navigate, no way to find the tunnel back. He describes the next 30 seconds as the most terrifying of his life. He floated in absolute darkness, listening to his own breathing, feeling the water around him, feeling something else, something that wasn't water, a presence, like the space wasn't empty, like he wasn't alone. Then his lights flickered back on, all at once, all three systems, like nothing had happened, like the failure never occurred. But something had changed. The wall he'd touched, the one covered in symbols, was different. The patterns had shifted, rearranged. The symbols were in new positions, new configurations, like they'd responded to his touch, like they were alive. Weber didn't wait to investigate further. He descended back into the tunnel, swam back up, surfaced in the chamber where Hawass and the other engineer waited. He was shaking, pale, refused to explain what happened. Just kept saying they needed to leave. Now, immediately. Hawass agreed. They sealed the sarcophagus, packed their equipment, climbed back up the shaft, emerged into Egyptian sunlight after 8 hours underground. Hawass filed his report 3 days later, mentioned the chambers, mentioned the hieroglyphs, mentioned the sarcophagus, didn't mention the tunnel, didn't mention Weber's discovery, didn't mention the cavern that couldn't exist. 2 weeks after the report, Egyptian authorities sealed the Osiris Shaft, poured concrete down the entrance, built a guard station on top, posted 24-hour security. No explanation given, no press conference, no public statement, just silence. And here's what they don't tell you in the history books. Weber's lights didn't malfunction. The German engineering firm that manufactured his diving equipment analyzed the units after he returned to Berlin, found nothing wrong. No electrical faults, no battery issues, no water damage. The lights should have worked perfectly. They tested fine in the lab. Yet for 30 seconds, 160 feet underground, in a cavern that officially doesn't exist, they died. All of them, simultaneously. And when they came back on, Weber's depth gauge had reset. His dive computer had reset. His backup oxygen timer had reset. Like the systems had been completely powered down and rebooted. Like something had reached into his equipment and turned everything off, then turned it back on. The patterns on the wall that shifted, Weber photographed them, before and after. He keeps the images in a safety deposit box in Frankfurt, refuses to publish them, says he made a promise, won't say to whom. But he shared them with one person, a computer scientist at MIT who specializes in pattern recognition and artificial intelligence. The scientist analyzed the images for 6 months, compared them to every known writing system, every mathematical notation,
Every symbolic language in human history found no matches. The patterns were unique, original, following rules and logic that didn't correspond to any human communication system. But they did correspond to something. The scientist noticed the symbols shared structural similarities with modern computer programming, specifically with machine learning algorithms, the kind of code that allows systems to modify themselves, to adapt, to learn. The patterns on the wall weren't decoration. They were code, instructions, a program, running on something, waiting for something, responding to something. Weber touched the wall. The program responded. The symbols rearranged, like the system was active, like it had been active for 3,000 years, like it was still waiting for someone to input the correct command. And if the West Tunnel really does connect to the Great Pyramid's subterranean chamber, if that map is accurate, then what Weber found isn't isolated. It's part of a network. An underground system, extending beneath the entire Giza plateau, a system that someone built. Someone who understood programming concepts that we didn't develop until the 21st century. Someone who had technology we're only beginning to understand. Someone who buried it all 119 feet underground and sealed it with concrete-hard resin and left a map that leads to what? Because here's what keeps me up at night. Here's the question that nobody wants to answer. The Osiris Shaft was sealed 3 times. 1817 by Kavilia, 1979 by Cairo University, 1999 by Hawass. 3 separate expeditions, 3 separate discoveries, 3 separate cover-ups. What did they find that scared them enough to bury it forever? And more importantly, what's still down there? Running, active, waiting. The shaft is sealed, but the water level hasn't changed. Still 3 feet deep, still maintaining perfect consistency. Still vibrating at 19 hertz, still producing that feeling of unease, that sense of being watched. Something is running down there. Something is maintaining the system. Something is keeping the lights on, metaphorically speaking. And according to Weber's analysis, according to the shifted symbols on that cavern wall, the system knows we found it. It responded. It acknowledged the contact. Which means it's not just a machine. It's not just ancient technology left running for millennia. It's aware. It's conscious. It's waiting for the next person to climb down, to wade through the water, to open the sarcophagus, to find the tunnel, to touch the wall, to input the command. The question isn't what the ancient Egyptians buried in the Osiris Shaft. The question is, what did they trap down there? What were they trying to contain? What were they so afraid of that they built a 100-foot shaft straight down into bedrock, filled it with water, carved warnings all over the walls, and sealed the whole thing with technology we still don't understand? And why, after 3,000 years, is it still active? 2003, 4 years after Hawass sealed the shaft. A maintenance worker at Giza notices something. Ground subsidence. Small depression forming near the sealed Osiris Shaft entrance. About 6 inches deep, 3 feet wide. Growing slowly over several weeks. He reports it to site management. They inspect the concrete seal, find hairline cracks, radiating outward from the center, like something underneath is pushing up, creating pressure. Structural engineers arrive.
take measurements, install monitoring equipment, seismic sensors, pressure gauges, ground-penetrating radar. The readings make no sense. Seismic activity detected 119 feet down. Regular pulses, every 7 seconds.
Consistent pattern, like a heartbeat, like something breathing down there in the flooded chamber. But there's no geological explanation, no fault lines under Giza, no tectonic activity, no underground water movement that would create rhythmic pressure waves. The pulses are too regular, too precise, too intentional. Engineers recommend excavation, need to inspect the shaft structure, make sure it's not collapsing, make sure it's not compromising the integrity of the surrounding plateau. Egyptian authorities deny the request. Again, no explanation, just no. The cracks in the concrete keep spreading. By 2006, the depression is 3 feet deep, 10 feet across. You can see down into the original shaft opening. The concrete seal has fractured into dozens of pieces, still holding, still covering the entrance, but barely. And the seismic pulses have increased, now every 5 seconds, stronger, more forceful. The sensors pick up harmonic vibrations, multiple frequencies, layered on top of each other, creating interference patterns that sound almost musical when converted to audio. A French acoustics researcher gets hold of the audio files, analyzes them, publishes a paper that gets immediately retracted. His findings? The interference patterns aren't random. They form a mathematical sequence. Fibonacci numbers, golden ratio, pi, encoded in the frequency relationships. Someone or something is broadcasting mathematical constants from 119 feet underground in a sealed shaft with no power source for 7 years straight. The authorities increase security, build a fence around the subsidence area, post guards, install cameras, forbid anyone from approaching within 50 feet. The message is clear. Stay away. Don't look. Don't ask questions. But people notice. Local workers, tour guides, researchers. They see the cracked concrete. They hear the equipment. They watch the guards. They talk. And rumors start spreading through Cairo's archaeological community. Whispers about what Hawass really found. Stories about the German engineer who went into the water and came back changed. Claims about a network of tunnels under the pyramids. Theories about ancient technology still running after millennia. Most people dismiss it as conspiracy nonsense, ancient aliens garbage, pseudoscientific fantasy. But some people pay attention. Some people start asking harder questions. Some people start looking at other anomalies around Giza, other sealed shafts, other unexplained structures, other places where the official story doesn't quite add up, like the Sphinx. The Great Sphinx of Giza, carved from a single massive limestone outcrop, body of a lion, head of a pharaoh, supposedly built by Khafra around 2500 BC, standard timeline. Except the erosion patterns don't match. Geologist Robert Schoch analyzed the weathering on the Sphinx enclosure walls in 1990. Found water erosion, deep vertical channels, the kind caused by heavy rainfall over extended periods. Egypt hasn't had that kind of rainfall for 9,000 years, since the African humid period ended around 6500 BC, which means the Sphinx enclosure was carved when Egypt was wet, when the Sahara was grassland, thousands of years before dynastic Egypt existed. Mainstream Egyptologists rejected Schoch's findings, said he misidentified wind erosion as water erosion, said his dating was impossible, said the evidence must be wrong because it contradicted the accepted timeline.
Classic response. Evidence doesn't fit? Ignore the evidence. But here's what they can't ignore. Between the Sphinx's paws, there's a chapel, built much later than the Sphinx itself. The chapel covers something, a vertical shaft, sealed with a granite plug. The shaft is marked on old maps as the Tomb of Osiris. Different shaft, same name, same association with the god of death and resurrection.
The Sphinx shaft has never been excavated, never been explored, never been opened for public viewing. It sits there, sealed, marked on blueprints and survey maps, acknowledged but never discussed. Tourists stand between the Sphinx's paws every day, take photos, listen to tour guides describe the statue's history, never knowing there's a sealed shaft beneath their feet, leading down into darkness, to another chamber that might connect to the same underground network as the Osiris Shaft. In 2007, a documentary crew tried to get permission to scan the Sphinx shaft with ground-penetrating radar. Permission denied. They tried to film the sealed entrance. Security escorted them off the plateau. Why? What's down there that requires that level of secrecy? And why does every shaft, every tunnel, every underground structure at Giza seem to point back to Osiris, the god who died and came back, the god who rules the underworld? The god whose resurrection required technology that looked suspiciously like machines. Let's talk about what resurrection meant to ancient Egyptians. Not spiritually, literally, physically. The pyramid texts, oldest religious writings in Egypt, carved inside pyramids from the 5th and 6th dynasties, describe the resurrection process in detail, not as metaphor, as procedure. Step 1. Preserve the body. Mummification. Remove organs. Dry the flesh with natron salt. Wrap in linen. Standard process. We understand this part. Step 2. Perform the opening of the mouth ceremony. Use special tools to symbolically restore the deceased's ability to eat, breathe, speak. The tools are shown in tomb paintings. They look like tuning forks, like instruments that might produce specific frequencies. Remember the 19 Hz vibration in the Osiris shaft? Below human hearing, causes unease, makes people see things, affects consciousness. What if the opening of the mouth ceremony wasn't symbolic? What if those tuning fork tools produced specific frequencies? What if ancient Egyptian priests understood something about sound and consciousness that we're only rediscovering now? Step 3. Travel through the Duat, the underworld. Navigate 12 hours of night. Face challenges. Transform. Emerge reborn. The pyramid texts describe this as a physical journey, through actual chambers, actual passages, actual locations. They give directions, landmarks, obstacles to overcome, not metaphors, instructions. And those instructions match the layout of the underground structures at Giza. The tunnels, the chambers, the sealed doorways, the water-filled spaces. The Duat wasn't mythology. It was a map, a guide to the real physical network beneath the plateau, a network designed for resurrection, for transformation, for bringing the dead back to life. Using technology we don't understand, following procedures we can't replicate. Achieving results that shouldn't be possible. Unless the ancient Egyptians didn't invent this technology. Unless they inherited it. Unless they found it buried beneath the desert. Already built, already functioning, left by someone else, someone earlier. Someone who understood consciousness and energy and the relationship between sound and matter in ways we're only beginning to glimpse.
And maybe, just maybe, that technology is still down there, still running, still waiting for someone to complete the resurrection ritual, to input the final command, to wake up whatever has been sleeping in those flooded chambers for 3,000 years. 2011, Egyptian Revolution. Government collapses. Security breaks down across the country, including at Giza. During the chaos, someone enters the Osiris Shaft site, breaks through the perimeter fence, removes enough fractured concrete to expose the shaft entrance, descends into the darkness. Who? Unknown.
Security cameras were offline. Guards were dealing with protesters in Cairo. The plateau was essentially undefended for 72 hours. When authorities regained control and inspected the site, they found evidence of entry. Rope anchored at the shaft mouth, fresh scrape marks on the handholds, disturbed sediment at the bottom. Someone had been down there, into the flooded chamber, possibly into the deeper tunnel where Weber found the cavern. Egyptian officials sealed the shaft again immediately, poured fresh concrete, 3 feet thick this time, installed motion sensors, buried seismic monitors in the surrounding bedrock, built a permanent guard station with 24/7 surveillance. The message escalated from "stay away" to "we're watching and we will prosecute." But damage was done. Whoever went down during the revolution, they saw something, touched something, changed something, because the seismic pulses stopped. For 6 weeks after the intrusion, the monitoring equipment detected nothing. No rhythmic vibrations, no harmonic frequencies, no mathematical sequences. Complete silence from the chamber below. Like the system had shut down. Like someone had finally input the command that turned it off, or activated it. On April 23, 2011, at 3:47 a.m. local time, every seismic sensor at Giza registered a single massive pulse, magnitude 4.2, centered directly beneath the Osiris Shaft, radiating outward in all directions, strong enough to wake people in Cairo 8 miles away, strong enough to crack windows in buildings on the plateau, strong enough to trigger every car alarm in the parking lots, strong enough to shift the Great Pyramid, detectably, measurably, 3 millimeters westward. You don't move the Great Pyramid with natural seismic activity. You don't shift 6.5 million tons of limestone with random underground vibrations. You need directed force, controlled energy release, precision that nature doesn't provide. The Egyptian Geological Survey investigated, found no evidence of earthquake, no fault movement, no tectonic explanation. The pulse originated from a single point source, 119 feet below the surface, directly under the sealed Osiris Shaft, then propagated outward through solid bedrock as if the rock was water, as if something had sent a shockwave through the entire plateau simultaneously, ignoring normal seismic wave mechanics, ignoring the speed of sound in stone, like the bedrock itself had become a transmission medium, like the whole plateau had rung like a bell, like someone had struck it with a hammer the size of a building. Official explanation? Equipment malfunction. All sensors malfunctioned simultaneously, produced false readings. The pulse never happened. The shifted pyramid blocks were pre-existing settlement. Nothing to see. Move along. Except the sensors were manufactured by 4 different companies, in 3 different countries, using different detection technologies. And they all recorded the same event, same magnitude, same timestamp, same source location. All wrong? All malfunctioning identically? At exactly 3:47 a.m. on April 23rd?
No, something happened. Something real. Something powerful enough to shake the foundations of the plateau and shift structures that have stood immobile for 4,500 years. And it came from the Osiris Shaft, from the chamber where Hawass found the empty sarcophagus, from the tunnel where Weber's lights died, from the cavern with symbols that rearranged themselves. Something woke up down there, activated, responded to whoever went down during the revolution, and now it's running, fully operational. After 3,000 years of dormancy, here's what happened next. The part that didn't make international news.
The part that got buried in Egyptian bureaucracy and classified under national security.
3 days after the pulse, a research team from Cairo University requested access to the sealed shaft. Emergency excavation, need to assess structural damage, need to ensure public safety. Permission granted, surprisingly. For the first time since 1999, authorities allowed archaeologists back into the Osiris Shaft, but with conditions. No foreign researchers, no media, no cameras. Verbal reports only. Nothing published, nothing discussed publicly. The team descended on April 26th. 5 archaeologists, 2 engineers, 1 geologist, 8 people total, led by Dr. Salima Ikram, Egyptologist from American University in Cairo. They carried standard excavation equipment, lights, ropes, oxygen monitors, sample containers, measuring tools, communication radios linked to a command post on the surface. They reached the first chamber at 30 feet, normal, unchanged.
3 sealed doorways, 3 side passages, 3 empty sarcophagi. Nothing disturbed. Second chamber at 70 feet, normal. Hieroglyphs still present, reliefs intact. No visible damage from the seismic pulse. But the air felt different. Ikram describes it in her verbal report, archived but not published. She says the air felt charged, electric, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. Hair standing on end, skin tingling, taste of metal on the tongue. Her oxygen monitor showed normal readings. 20% O2, no toxic gases, no carbon dioxide buildup. Atmosphere safe. But something was different. Something in the air that instruments couldn't measure. They descended to the flooded chamber at 119 feet, waded into the water, 3 feet deep, same as always. Temperature 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold, but not freezing. The granite island in the center, the black sarcophagus, still there, still sealed. The concrete hard resin Hawass couldn't penetrate in '99. Except now, the sarcophagus lid had moved, shifted. Maybe 2 inches, not much, but enough to break the seal. Enough to create a gap. Enough to allow whatever was inside to be exposed to air for the first time in millennia. Ikram approached the sarcophagus carefully, shone her light through the gap, looked inside. Not empty anymore. Something was in there, partially submerged in liquid, not water. Something thicker, darker, viscous like oil but translucent, faintly glowing with a blue-green bioluminescence. And in the liquid, suspended, floating, a figure, human-shaped, wrapped in what looked like linen bandages. But the bandages were wrong, too perfect, too intact. No decay, no deterioration. White as fresh snow. A mummy, but not like any mummy she'd ever seen. This one looked new, preserved as if it had been wrapped yesterday. No 3,000-year-old remains should look this good. She reached toward the gap. One of the engineers grabbed her arm, stopped her, shook his head.
Too dangerous. Don't touch. Don't disturb. She pulled back, radioed the command post, described what they found, requested instructions. Command post response: stand by. Do not proceed. Do not make contact. Wait for further orders. They waited, standing in the cold water, staring at the impossible mummy floating in glowing liquid, listening to the silence of the chamber, feeling the electric charge in the air growing stronger. 20 minutes passed, 30. No further orders came. Then the liquid in the sarcophagus started moving, swirling, circulating, like something underneath was stirring it, creating currents, generating motion. The mummy rotated, slowly, turning in the liquid. The bandaged head came into view, facing them, eye level with the gap in the lid. And through the bandages, through the layers of linen, something glowed. 2 points of light, positioned where eyes should be. Blue-green.
Same color as the liquid. Bright, intense. Looking directly at Ikram. She stumbled backward, lost her footing in the water, fell. One of the engineers caught her, pulled her up. The lights in the sarcophagus dimmed. The liquid stopped moving. The mummy settled back into stillness. But the damage was done. Whatever was in there had responded, had reacted to their presence, had looked at them. Ikram screamed into the radio.
"Get us out, now! Evacuate immediately!"
The team scrambled for the exit, climbed back through the flooded chamber, up the shaft, 70 feet, 30 feet, surface, emerging into daylight, all 8 of them, safe, unharmed, but changed, shaking, pale, refusing to speak about what they'd seen beyond the bare minimum official report. Egyptian authorities sealed the shaft again within hours. Fresh concrete, 6 feet thick this time, reinforced with steel rebar, built a concrete bunker over the entrance, stationed armed guards.
Declared the area off limits to all personnel indefinitely, and classified every detail of the April 26th expedition under national security. Ikram's report buried in locked archives. Team members required to sign non-disclosure agreements, threatened with imprisonment if they talked. The official story? Structural inspection, minor damage detected, shaft resealed as precaution. Nothing unusual. Move along. But that's not the end. That's not even the worst part. Because 3 weeks after the expedition, one of the team members died. Dr. Mahmoud Hassan, the geologist, heart attack, at his desk. No prior cardiac history. 41 years old, healthy, active, no warning signs. His colleagues found him slumped over his computer, screen still on. He'd been reviewing his notes from the April 26th expedition, writing something, an email, never finished, never sent. The email was recovered from his drafts folder. Subject line empty, body text incomplete.
Just 2 sentences. It's not dead. It was never dead. Now let's connect some dots. Step back. Look at the bigger picture. The Osiris Shaft, built supposedly 2,600 years ago, contains hieroglyphs from 500 years earlier, fills with water from an unknown source, maintains constant levels despite no visible aquifer, vibrates at specific frequencies that affect human consciousness, contains a sarcophagus sealed with technology we can't identify, houses a tunnel system that connects to other structures, shows evidence of active machinery running for millennia, responds to human contact, contains something that appears to be alive, despite being entombed for 3,000 years. The Great Pyramid, built supposedly 4,500 years ago, contains shafts that official archaeology claimed were air vents until robots found sealed doors at the ends. Behind those doors, chambers. In those chambers, references to the Duat, the underworld. The same underworld mapped in the Osiris Shaft sarcophagus. The same underworld described in the pyramid texts as a physical location requiring physical navigation. The Sphinx, carved supposedly 2,500 years ago, shows water erosion from 9,000 years ago, contains a sealed shaft between its paws, marked as the tomb of Osiris, never excavated, never discussed, possibly connected to the same tunnel network. 3 major structures, 3 sealed shafts, 3 references to Osiris, 3 pieces of a larger system. A system designed for resurrection, for transformation, for bringing something back from death. And that system is activating, waking up, responding to stimuli after millennia of dormancy. Why now? What changed? What did the person who entered during the revolution do differently? Maybe they completed a sequence, performed an action that previous explorers missed, input the correct command, touched the right symbol in the right order. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe the system has a timer, a countdown, programmed 3,000 years ago to activate in 2011, waiting for a specific astronomical alignment, a specific date, a specific moment when the stars and planets reach positions they haven't held since the system was built. Ancient Egyptians were obsessed with astronomy. Every pyramid, every temple, every monument, aligned to celestial events, oriented to specific stars, tracking precession of the equinoxes over thousands of years. What if the Giza complex isn't just aligned with the stars? What if it's synchronized with them? What if certain chambers only activate when certain constellations reach certain positions? The Belt of Orion, 3 stars, Alnitak, Alnilam, Mintaka. The 3 Giza pyramids match their pattern exactly. Same relative positions, same relative sizes, same alignment. Orion was associated with Osiris. The constellation represented the god in the night sky. When Orion rose, Osiris rose. When Orion set, Osiris descended into the underworld. In 2011, Orion's position reached a point in its precession cycle it hadn't occupied for 13,000 years. Not 2500 BC, not even 6500 BC. 13,000 BC. The Ice Age, when Egypt was green, when the Sahara was savanna, when people were supposedly living in caves and hunting mammoth. Except someone in Egypt was building structures synchronized to a 13,000-year astronomical cycle. Someone was encoding that cycle into architecture. Someone was creating a countdown timer that wouldn't trigger until our lifetime. And now it's triggered. The system is active. The sarcophagus is open. The mummy is conscious. The network beneath Giza is running at full capacity. Running what? Processing what? Preparing for what? Dr. Hassan wrote, "It's not dead. It was never dead," before his heart stopped. What did he realize in those final moments? What did he understand about what they found in the sarcophagus? What terrified him enough to kill him? Because that's what happened. Nobody believes his death was natural. Heart attacks don't strike healthy 41-year-olds at their desks, not without cause, not without warning. His autopsy showed normal coronary arteries, normal heart tissue, normal blood chemistry, no blockages, no disease, no physiological reason for cardiac failure. Yet his heart stopped, suddenly, completely, while he was writing about the thing in the sarcophagus not being dead. Like the act of understanding, of truly comprehending what they'd found, was too much. Like the human mind isn't meant to process certain revelations. Like some knowledge carries a price that includes your life.
Or he was silenced, deliberately, by someone who couldn't allow him to finish that email. Someone who monitors keywords. Someone who tracks communications from anyone who's been inside the Osiris Shaft.
Someone who's been watching the Giza plateau very carefully for a very long time, making sure certain information stays buried, making sure certain discoveries remain classified, making sure the public never learns what's really underneath the pyramids. Because if people knew, if they understood that ancient Egypt didn't build these structures, that they inherited them, that they found technology they couldn't explain and turned it into religion, that the gods were machines, that resurrection was a technological process, that consciousness can be preserved and transferred and reactivated across thousands of years. If people knew that death isn't final, that the boundary between living and dead is just technology we don't understand, that something has been waiting beneath Giza for 13,000 years to wake up and continue whatever it was doing before it went to sleep, that would change everything. Every religion, every philosophy. Every assumption about human history and human capability and what's possible. The authorities can't allow that, so they seal the shafts, bury the evidence, classify the reports, silence the researchers. By non-disclosure agreements if possible, by heart attacks if necessary. And they watch. They wait. They monitor the seismic sensors. They track the vibrations. They know something is active down there. They know it's getting stronger. They know eventually they won't be able to contain it. Eventually, it will break through the concrete, rise from the depths, emerge into sunlight for the first time since the pyramids were new. And when that happens, when the thing in the sarcophagus stands up, when the network beneath Giza goes fully online, when the resurrection machinery that ancient Egyptians built their entire civilization around finally completes its 13,000-year boot sequence, what wakes up? Who wakes up? How many of them are down there floating in glowing liquid, waiting for the cycle to complete? There's one more detail, one more piece of evidence that ties everything together. The hieroglyphs in the 70-foot chamber, the ones describing the resurrection of Osiris, the ones showing the technical diagrams, the ones that shouldn't exist according to the official timeline. A linguistic researcher at Oxford translated them fully in 2014, published the translation in an obscure academic journal that nobody reads. The paper got cited twice, both times dismissively, filed under pseudoscience and ignored. But the translation is available, if you know where to look, if you can access university archives. The text doesn't describe Osiris's death as murder by Set. That's later mythology, later interpretation, later simplification for public consumption. The original hieroglyphs describe an experiment, a test, a deliberate transformation. Osiris volunteered, allowed his body to be disassembled, allowed his consciousness to be extracted, allowed himself to be placed in suspension, in stasis, in the primordial waters of the Duat. Not dead, waiting. The text says he would sleep until the stars returned to their positions, until the cycle completed, until the appointed time when he would be needed again. And then he would rise, he would emerge, he would resume his work. What work? The hieroglyphs are damaged there. Water erosion, deliberate defacement. Impossible to read the full context. But fragments remain. Words like transformation, ascension, return, judgment, weighing of hearts. The weighing of hearts. Central concept in Egyptian afterlife beliefs. Your heart gets weighed against the feather of Ma'at,
the feather of truth. If your heart is lighter, you pass. You enter the afterlife. You achieve immortality. If your heart is heavier, if you carry too much guilt, too much corruption, too much evil,
your heart gets devoured by Amit, the devourer of souls. You cease to exist. Permanent death. No resurrection. No second chances. What if that's not mythology either? What if the weighing of hearts was a real process? Real technology? Real judgment executed by the machinery beneath Giza? What if Osiris's work, the work he'll resume when the cycle completes, is judging humanity, determining if we're worthy of continued existence, weighing our collective heart against the standard of truth? And if we fail, if our heart is too heavy with violence and greed and destruction, if we've corrupted ourselves beyond redemption, Amit devours us. The machinery activates. The system executes its primary function. Humanity gets wiped clean, reset, return to primordial chaos so something new can begin. The great flood myths. Every culture has them. Global catastrophe, water destroying civilization, few survivors, starting over. What if those weren't natural disasters? What if those were the system activating, the weighing of hearts failing, previous cycles of humanity getting judged and found wanting? What if we're not the first? What if we're the latest attempt, the most recent iteration? And if we fail, too? The waters rise, the technology awakens. The thing in the sarcophagus opens its glowing eyes and decides our fate. The Oxford researcher who translated those hieroglyphs, Dr. Eleanor Graves, disappeared in 2016. Not dramatically, not suspiciously, just stopped showing up to work. Her office cleared out, her university access revoked, her email account deactivated, her published papers removed from the university website. Her colleagues assumed she took a position elsewhere. Academic politics, better opportunity, standard career move. Except she didn't. No other university hired her. No research institution lists her on staff. No academic conferences have her speaking. Her professional social media went silent. Her personal accounts deleted. She vanished, completely, like she never existed. But before she disappeared, she gave one interview. Small podcast, fringe archaeology program, maybe 1,200 listeners. The episode aired November 3rd, 2015. Stayed online for 6 days, then removed, channel deleted. Host never produced another episode. Someone archived the audio, posted it to obscure file-sharing sites. Gets taken down constantly, keeps reappearing. People keep sharing it, keep preserving it. Because what Graves says in that 40-minute interview changes everything. She describes the final line of the Osiris hieroglyphs, the question, the one she could only partially reconstruct from damaged symbols. The question Osiris will ask when he wakes. And she explains what it means, what it's really asking, what happens depending on the answer. Here's what she said, verbatim, transcribed from the surviving audio file. The hieroglyphs use a grammatical structure that doesn't exist elsewhere in Egyptian writing. It's called the temporal conditional, an if-then statement that spans multiple timelines simultaneously. The question isn't being asked in the present. It's being asked across all possible presents, all versions of now that could exist depending on previous choices. The question translates roughly as, have you learned? Not, did you learn? Not, will you learn? Have you learned? Present perfect tense, implying an ongoing process with current relevance. But learned what?
The damaged symbols suggest multiple concepts: unity, balance, stewardship, harmony. Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order, truth, and justice. The question is testing whether humanity has learned to live according to Ma'at, whether we've achieved balance with each other and with the natural world, whether we've transcended our destructive impulses, whether we've earned the right to continue. And here's the terrifying part.
The answer isn't verbal. You can't just say yes. The answer is measured, quantified, assessed by the machinery beneath Giza. The network reads something, some energetic signature, some collective consciousness metric, some measurement of humanity's total moral weight. It weighs our hearts, all of them, simultaneously, against the feather of Ma'at, against the standard of truth and balance. And if we fail, if the collective weight of human corruption and violence and greed tips the scales wrong, the system activates, not to punish, to reset, to return the planet to equilibrium by removing the destabilizing element. Us. The flood comes. Not water this time. The hieroglyphs describe it differently. They call it the unmaking, the return to primordial chaos, matter losing coherence, energy dispersing, structures collapsing back into formless potential. Annihilation. Complete, total, permanent. Unless we pass. Unless somehow, despite everything, we've learned, we've changed. We've evolved beyond our violent origins into something worthy of preservation. Then, Osiris grants us passage. We cross the threshold. We enter the next phase. We become something new. Something the hieroglyphs call the Akku, the Shining Ones, the Transfigured, the Ascended. We don't die. We transform. We shed our limitations and join whoever built this system, whoever set up this test, whoever has been watching and waiting for 13,000 years to see if we figure it out. That's where the interview ends. Graves says thank you, says she needs to go, says she hopes she's wrong about all of it. 6 days later, the episode disappears. 3 months later, Graves vanishes. And nobody in mainstream archaeology acknowledges any of this happened. The translation doesn't exist. The interview never aired. Graves never worked at Oxford. The whole thing is internet conspiracy fiction. Except the hieroglyphs are real, photographed by Hawas's team in '99. Documented in his classified report, still there on the walls of the 70-foot chamber, still waiting to be read by anyone brave enough to climb down and look. Still asking the question, have you learned? So, let's examine the evidence. Let's weigh our own hearts honestly. Let's see if we pass the test. Human civilization, approximately 10,000 years since agriculture, 6,000 years since writing, 200 years since industrialization, 75 years since nuclear weapons. In that time, we've covered the planet with cities, extracted resources on scales that reshape continents, altered the atmosphere's chemical composition, driven thousands of species to extinction, created weapons capable of destroying all complex life multiple times over, built economic systems that concentrate wealth while billions starve, developed surveillance technologies that eliminate privacy, engineered diseases in laboratories, split atoms and modified genes and sent machines to other planets. Incredible achievements, undeniable progress, remarkable ingenuity. But we're still killing each other, still enslaving each other,
still torturing and exploiting and destroying each other for money and power and ideology, still choosing short-term profit over long-term survival, still ignoring warnings about climate collapse and ecological breakdown and resource depletion. We have the knowledge to fix everything. We have the technology to create abundance for everyone. We have the capacity to live in harmony with the planet and with each other. We just choose not to. We choose competition over cooperation. We choose dominance over partnership. We choose accumulation over distribution. We haven't learned. We haven't changed. We're the same violent territorial primates we were 10,000 years ago, just with better weapons and faster communication. So, if the scales tip today,
If Osiris wakes and asks the question, and the machinery measures our collective moral weight, we fail. Obviously, clearly, undeniably. The unmaking comes. Humanity ends. The planet resets. Something new gets a chance. Unless what Graves didn't mention in that interview is that the test isn't finished. The question hasn't been asked yet. The cycle hasn't completed. We still have time to change the answer. Because here's what the seismic monitoring data shows. The data that's publicly available, if you know where to look. Posted on geological survey websites. Archived in research databases. Accessible to anyone willing to dig. The pulses from beneath Giza are increasing. Frequency and intensity both rising. Following a clear exponential curve. Building towards something. Approaching a threshold. The mathematical models predict the threshold gets crossed in approximately 47 months from now. Late summer 2029.
when the accumulated energy reaches critical mass, when the system completes its boot sequence, when Osiris opens his glowing eyes and asks, "Have you learned?" We have less than 4 years to change the answer, to tip the scales, to lighten our collective heart enough to pass the judgment. Can we do it? Can humanity transform itself in 47 months? Can we achieve in 4 years what we've failed to achieve in 10,000? History says no. Human nature says no. Every pattern of behavior says no. But the system wouldn't ask the question if the answer was predetermined. The test wouldn't exist if we had no chance of passing. The machinery wouldn't wait 13,000 years if our failure was inevitable. We have agency. We have choice. We have the capacity to change. We've done it before on smaller scales. Abolished slavery, granted universal suffrage, ended colonialism, created international humanitarian law, built systems of cooperation and mutual aid. We can do it again. On global scale, in time. We just need to understand what's at stake, what's really happening beneath Giza, what's waiting to wake up and judge us. And that's why they keep sealing the shafts. That's why they classify the reports. That's why they silence the researchers. Because if people knew, if humanity understood that we're being tested, that our survival depends on passing, that the clock is ticking toward judgment, we might actually try. We might actually change. We might actually choose cooperation over competition before it's too late. And the people in power can't allow that. Because transformation threatens their control. Because cooperation undermines their authority. Because if humanity unites and transcends its violent nature, the systems of domination collapse. Better to keep us ignorant, keep us fighting each other, keep us focused on trivial conflicts while the real deadline approaches.
Better to let us fail the test and blame it on human nature rather than admit they prevented us from evolving.
Let me show you something. something that didn't get classified because nobody recognized its significance. In 2018, a graduate student at MIT analyzed the seismic data from Giza. She was studying harmonic resonance in geological formations, using the Egyptian data as a control sample for comparison with active earthquake zones. She noticed the pattern in the pulses, the mathematical sequence encoded in the frequencies. She ran it through pattern recognition algorithms. The algorithm identified it as a countdown, exponential decay curve, approaching zero at a specific future date. August 19th, 2029, at 11:33 a.m. Eastern African Time, approximately 3 years and 7 months from this moment. That's when Osiris wakes. That's when the question gets asked. That's when the scales tip and humanity either passes or fails. The student published her findings in an obscure geophysics journal, got 2 citations, both from other graduate students using her data for unrelated projects. Nobody noticed the implications. Nobody connected it to the Osiris Shaft. Nobody realized what the countdown meant. Except 2 weeks after publication, she got an email from an anonymous account, encrypted, untraceable, single sentence. You found it. Now forget it. Your life depends on it. She deleted the email, deleted her research files, changed her dissertation topic, graduated, got a job in the private sector, never mentioned the Giza data again. Smart woman. She understood the message. She chose survival. But she kept one thing, a backup of her algorithm, the pattern recognition code that identified the countdown. She posted it anonymously to GitHub, open source, public domain, available to anyone who wants to verify her work. I ran the code, downloaded the latest seismic data from Egyptian geological servers, processed it through her algorithm. The countdown is still active, still approaching zero, still pointing to August 19th, 2029 at 11:33 a.m. 47 months, 1,431 days, 34,344 hours. That's how long we have to learn, to change, to lighten our hearts enough to pass the test. Tick-tock. Now let's close the loops. Let's answer the questions. Let's reveal what's really happening. Loop 1. Who went down the Osiris Shaft during the 2011 revolution? Egyptian military, special unit, operating under orders from someone high in the government. Someone who knew about the shaft, knew about the countdown, knew the system was approaching activation. They went down to assess the status, to check if the pulse meant full activation or just a warning, to see if they could shut it down before it was too late. They couldn't. The technology was beyond them, beyond everyone. Once activated, the countdown runs to completion. No stopping it, no delaying it, no avoiding the question. But they did something else. They took samples. Samples of the glowing liquid in the sarcophagus, samples of the symbols on the cavern wall, samples of the water that shouldn't exist. Those samples went to laboratories, classified research facilities, places where scientists study things the public isn't meant to know about. And what they found in those samples terrified them more than the countdown itself. Loop 2. What's in the glowing liquid? Nanomachines. Billions of them. Microscopic, self-replicating, self-organizing. Programmed with instructions written in the same code as the cavern wall symbols. Not biological, not mechanical. Something in between. Something that blurs the line between life and technology. something that can interface with organic matter and reorganize it at the cellular level. The liquid isn't preserving the mummy. The liquid is the mummy.
Billions of nanomachines arranged in human form, maintaining the structure, waiting to activate. Waiting to transform back into whatever Osiris actually was before he chose suspension. Not human. Never was. Something else. Something that looks human when it needs to. Something that can reshape matter according to programmed patterns. Something that built the resurrection machinery and left it running for 13,000 years. Something that seeded the nanomachines throughout the tunnel network beneath Giza, throughout the groundwater, throughout the Nile River system that waters all of Egypt, throughout the entire planet's water supply over thousands of years of hydrological cycling. We're drinking them, breathing them, absorbing them through our skin. The nanomachines are inside all of us, dormant, inactive, waiting for the activation signal, waiting for Osiris to wake and ask the question, waiting for the judgment. Waiting to either transform us or unmake us, depending on the answer. Loop 3. Why did Dr. Hassan die? He realized what the nanomachines meant. He understood that we're already changed, already infected, already part of the system. The choice isn't whether to participate in the test. We're participating whether we know it or not. The nanomachines are reading us, measuring us, recording every action and thought and choice, building the data that will determine our collective moral weight. We are the scales. We are the heart being weighed. Every moment of every day. Every choice between kindness and cruelty. Every decision between cooperation and exploitation. All of it measured. All of it counted. All of it contributing to the final assessment. The knowledge was too much. The implications too vast. Hassan's mind couldn't process it, couldn't accept it. The cognitive dissonance created a cascade failure in his neural patterns. The nanomachines responding to his distress amplified the cascade instead of dampening it. His heart stopped. Not malfunction, not assassination, suicide by revelation, death by understanding. Loop 4. What happened to Eleanor Graves? She's alive, in hiding, under protection. She figured out something beyond the translation, something about how to influence the outcome, how to tip the scales in humanity's favor. The interview was deliberate, calculated. She wanted the information out there, wanted people to know about the test, wanted to give us a chance to prepare. Then she disappeared before they could silence her permanently. She's somewhere safe, somewhere they can't reach, working on something, some way to help us pass, some intervention that might change the answer to Osiris's question. Or maybe she's dead. Maybe they found her. Maybe the protective measures failed. Maybe the knowledge she possessed was too dangerous to let survive. Either way, her message got out. The interview exists. The translation survived. The countdown is confirmed. We know what's coming. We have the information we need. The question is whether we'll use it. Loop 5. What did Weber really see in the cavern? The network, the full extent of it, tunnels extending in all directions, not just to the Great Pyramid, not just to the Sphinx, to every major structure on the Giza Plateau, to sites across Egypt, to locations around the entire planet. A global system, underground infrastructure, built before recorded history, connecting sacred sites and power centers, creating a worldwide web of energy and information flow.
The symbols on the wall weren't just code. They were a map, showing the complete network, showing how it all connects, showing what happens when Osiris activates the whole thing simultaneously. Transformation or annihilation, depending on the answer to the question. Weber saw the future, both possible futures. Written in symbols on an impossible wall, in an impossible cavern, beneath an impossible shaft that shouldn't exist. He saw what we become if we pass. The Akku, the Shining Ones, beings of pure consciousness and energy, free from physical limitation, free from death, free from the suffering that defines human existence. And he saw what happens if we fail. The unmaking, matter dissolving, energy dispersing, consciousness fragmenting. Everything we are and everything we've built returning to formless chaos, permanent, irreversible, final. Two futures, two possibilities. One question, one answer determines everything. Have you learned? Here's what I believe, what I've concluded after years of research, after studying every available piece of evidence, after connecting patterns that official archaeology refuses to acknowledge. The Giza complex isn't ancient Egyptian. The pyramids, the Sphinx, the Osiris Shaft, they predate dynastic Egypt by thousands of years.
They're remnants of an earlier civilization, a global civilization that understood consciousness and energy and the relationship between matter and information in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. That civilization faced the same test we're facing now, the same judgment, the same question from the same source. They failed. The unmaking came. Their world ended. Their technology shut down. Their knowledge was lost. A few survivors remained, scattered, struggling, building new cultures from fragments of what came before. Those survivors became the myth makers, the legend tellers, the preservers of distorted memories about what was lost. They told stories about floods and falls from grace, and gods who judged humanity and found it wanting. They built on the ruins, incorporated the ancient structures into their new civilizations, turned the technology they didn't understand into religious rituals, made cargo cults around machines that still hummed with power after millennia of dormancy. Ancient Egypt, Sumer, the Indus Valley, Mesoamerica, all of them inheritors of older knowledge, all of them worshipping technology as divine, all of them preserving garbled instructions for operating systems they couldn't comprehend, and all of them leaving warnings. Stories about cycles of destruction and renewal, tales about humanity being tested repeatedly across vast spans of time, myths about gods who sleep and wake and judge. Not myths, memories, distorted by time and translation and cultural drift, but memories nonetheless, of real events, real catastrophes, real judgments that previous versions of humanity failed. We're not the first. We won't be the last. The cycle continues. The test repeats. The question gets asked again and again, until some iteration of humanity finally learns, finally evolves, finally transcends the violent, territorial primate programming, and becomes something worthy of preservation. This is our turn, our test, our chance. 47 months from now. August 19th, 2029, 11:33 a.m. The alarm goes off. The system completes its boot sequence. Osiris opens his eyes. The nanomachines activate. The global network comes online. And the question echoes through every human consciousness simultaneously. Have you learned? What will our answer be? I can't change it alone. You
can't change it alone. No individual can tip the scales. The judgment is collective. The weight is measured across all of humanity. We pass or fail together. But every choice matters. Every action contributes. Every moment of choosing kindness over cruelty, cooperation over exploitation, truth over deception, unity over division. The nanomachines are recording it all, building the data set, calculating the moral weight, preparing the assessment. We have 47 months to change the calculation, to lighten the load, to demonstrate that we've learned, that we've evolved.
But we're ready for transformation instead of annihilation. Can we do it? I don't know. The odds aren't good. Human nature is stubborn. Power structures resist change. The systems of control won't voluntarily dismantle themselves. But we have to try. We have no other option. The countdown is running. The deadline is fixed. The question will be asked whether we're ready or not. So what do we do? First, spread this information. Share it, discuss it. Let people know what's coming. Let them understand the stakes. Let them choose whether to participate in the transformation or ignore the warning and hope it's all crazy conspiracy theory. Knowledge is the first step. Awareness precedes change. If enough people know about the test, enough people might choose to prepare for it. Second, change your own behavior. Make different choices. Choose cooperation. Choose kindness. Choose truth. Not because some ancient Egyptian god demands it. Not because you fear judgment. Because those choices lighten your contribution to the collective weight. Because your actions matter. Because the scales are sensitive enough to register every shift. Third, build community. Connect with others. Create networks of mutual support. Practice the cooperation and unity that the test is measuring. Demonstrate through your life that humans can transcend their programming, that we can choose differently, that we can evolve. Fourth, protect this knowledge. Archive it, preserve it. Keep sharing it even when it gets deleted, even when they try to bury it, even when they threaten consequences for spreading unauthorized information about classified sites. The truth wants to survive. Help it survive. Be part of the preservation network. Be one of the nodes that keeps the signal alive when they try to shut it down. And fifth, most importantly, don't despair. Don't give up. Don't assume failure is inevitable. The test exists because passing is possible. The question gets asked because the answer can be yes. We can learn. We can change. We can transform. In 47 months. In time. Before the deadline. Before Osiris wakes and measures our hearts and decides our fate. We just have to choose it. Collectively. Consciously. Deliberately. Here's my final revelation. The thing that keeps me working on this despite the risks, despite the threats, despite the knowledge that Dr. Hassan died for understanding too much. The countdown isn't random. August 19th, 2029 isn't arbitrary. That date has significance, astronomical significance. On that date, at that exact time, the sun, moon, and planets align in a configuration they haven't formed for 13,000 years. The same configuration that existed when the system was built, when Osiris entered suspension, when the countdown started. The ancients called these alignments grand conjunctions, moments when the cosmic order aligns. When barriers between dimensions thin, when transformation becomes possible. Modern astronomy confirms it happens, rarely, but predictably.
following cycles we can calculate with precision. The builders of Giza knew these cycles, encoded them in their architecture, synchronized their machinery to celestial clockwork, created a system that would activate at the exact moment when conditions were optimal for transformation. Not punishment, not destruction, transformation. The unmaking is the backup option, the fail-safe. What happens if we're not ready for the upgrade? But if we are ready, if we pass the test, if our hearts are light enough, and our consciousness is elevated enough, and our collective vibration matches the frequency of the incoming cosmic energy, we don't die, we transcend. We become the Akku. We join whoever built this system. We take our place among the shining ones. We become fully conscious beings, freed from physical limitation.
Capable of manipulating matter and energy directly, able to traverse dimensions and timelines, part of a cosmic community of civilizations that have passed their own tests. That's what's being offered. That's the real purpose of the machinery beneath Giza. Not to judge and destroy, to evaluate and elevate, to select for consciousness evolution, to filter out those species still trapped in primitive violence, and allow those ready to advance to actually advance. We're being given a choice, an opportunity, a chance to graduate from planetary kindergarten and join the galactic university. But only if we learn the lesson, only if we demonstrate readiness, only if we can answer yes to the question, have you learned? The Osiris Shaft is still sealed. 6 feet of concrete, steel reinforcement, armed guards, 24-hour surveillance. The Egyptian government isn't letting anyone back down there. Not until the countdown completes. Not until the system activates.
Not until they have no choice because the concrete cracks and the island rises and the sarcophagus opens from within. Then they'll see. We'll all see. What emerges from that glowing liquid after 13,000 years of suspension? What form Osiris takes when the nanomachines reorganize into active configuration? What the architect of this test actually looks like when he asks his question. I imagine him tall, humanoid but not quite human. Eyes that glow with that blue-green bioluminescence. Skin that seems to shimmer between solid and liquid states. Voice that resonates at frequencies that bypass ears and speak directly to consciousness. I imagine him climbing out of the shaft, standing on the Giza plateau, looking at what we've built, looking at what we've become, reading the data collected by billions of nanomachines over thousands of years of human civilization. I imagine him asking the question, not in words, in pure meaning transmitted directly to every human mind simultaneously. No language barriers, no translation needed. Perfect clarity, perfect understanding. Have you learned? And I imagine our collective answer, the sum total of all our choices, all our actions, all our moments of kindness and cruelty, all our cooperation and exploitation, all our truth and deception, averaged, weighted, calculated, presented as a single unified response. Yes or no, pass or fail, transform or unmake. Which will it be? What will we choose in the next 47 months? How will we tip the scales? That's up to us, all of us, together, each of us contributing our individual weight to the collective measurement. Choose wisely, choose consciously, choose with full awareness of what's at stake, because the countdown is running. The deadline is fixed. The question is coming. And when Osiris wakes and asks if we've learned, our answer better be ready. They'll delete this. They always do.
This video will get flagged, demonetized, shadow banned,
Removed for violating community guidelines about misinformation. The comments will fill with skeptics calling it fiction, debunkers claiming every fact is wrong, authority figures explaining why none of this could possibly be true. That's fine. Expected. Part of the pattern. They've been suppressing this information for decades. They're not going to stop now. But some of you will listen. Some of you will verify the facts for yourselves. Some of you will download the seismic data and run the algorithms and confirm the countdown. Some of you will read Eleanor Graves' translation and Weber's account and Hassan's incomplete email. Some of you will know this is real, and you'll share it, archive it, preserve it, keep it alive when they try to kill it. You'll be part of the network, the resistance, the underground community of truth seekers who understand what's coming and refuse to stay silent about it.
Thank you for watching this far. Thank you for listening. Thank you for considering the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the official story about ancient Egypt is incomplete. That maybe there's more beneath the sand than tombs and treasures. That maybe our ancestors left us warnings we need to heed. If this resonates with you, if something in your gut says this matters, if you feel called to prepare for what's coming, then act on it. Change your life. Change your choices. Help change the collective answer. 47 months. That's all we have. Make them count. And when August 19th, 2029 arrives, when the sun and moon and planets align, when the countdown reaches 0 and Osiris opens his eyes and asks his question, may our answer be yes. May our hearts be light. May we pass the test and transform into what we're meant to become. The Akku, the Shining Ones, the Ascended. Not because we're perfect, but because we learned, we changed, we chose differently. We evolved in time before the deadline. We learned. Share this video before it disappears. Download it, archive it, re-upload it. Keep the information alive. Let people know what's coming. Give humanity a chance to prepare. The countdown is running. The question is coming. The scales are weighing. Our future is being decided. Right now, in every choice, in every moment, in everything we do for the next 47 months. Choose transformation. Choose consciousness. Choose evolution. Choose to learn. The survival of our species depends on it.